Before we get started, subscribe to my channel. I've been listening to Judge Joe Brown this last maybe 2, 3 years, and let me tell you, this man is brilliant, very, very, very intelligent. I don't know how he remember all this stuff. He can quote things out of the law books. He remember different stuffs. He talks about Obama, Biden, all kind of stuff. This man is really deep. And he's turning 77 this year. You see, he was born July the 5th, 1947. So this man got a lot of knowledge. So I'm going to share a little bit with my subscribers. And when you guys get a chance, do some more research. Just listen to what this man is saying. It's very deep. Check it out.
I got you.
And I'm an independent now. I can't stand the Democratic Party.
Really? What happened? What caused you to change?
They decided to be anti-family and anti-man, and I don't buy into that.
Has it always been like that?
No, it wasn't. Something happened. They kind of got stuck over there in that far left corner someplace, and they forgot about the working people in this country.
When do you think that happened, Judge? Because you ran as a Democrat. Now you're
I
independent.
did. It bothers me. Somewhere in the last 55 years, what's happened is the country is switched over into glorifying what I call dysfunction. And at some point, it's just enough is enough. You've got a thing right now where they're trying to groom children in school. They're trying to install a secular religion as the official religion of the country. People don't have any cause, any purpose anymore. So they want to give them one, but in this one it says you have no duty, honor, obligation, responsibility, accountability, be what the hell you want to be. Just get your freak on and there you go. But that's not sufficient to keep people working.
Now, when you say 55 years, is it probably closer to the last 15 years that it's really...
No, it's been working. See, I remember the class at UCLA 1969, and I remember what was being said back then when people said we hate men for one reason or another, and men are the cause of war, so we're going to ruin this thing for the men and get rid of masculinity. And you had this problem with Hollywood when it was going broke in the face of color television, and you switched from 2 movies every Thursday and Sunday every week of the year, and Hollywood was going broke, so they said, let's ramp the fee up from 50 cents to $1.50, and we will have one movie that stays in as long as we can, so let's attract the most people by going to the lowest common denominator, promoting dysfunction, ridiculousness, and meanwhile we can propagandize the country to get rid of manhood. And that basically is what's been happening. Johnson administration came up with a safety net. They had good intentions, but people are enterprising, so when they saw the opportunities that were presented, they went for them. And instead of having a safety net that dealt with rescuing people from an untenable situation due to the economics that they found themselves faced with, you got people that said, well, instead of using this to help me with my babies, I use babies to get that so I can help myself. So you have multi-generational situations, and even back in the late 90s, I had people in my courtroom where there were 6 generations where nobody had had a job ever. I had one woman in my courtroom starting in 1994. She had felony drug and theft charges. She was 57. She had a 43-year-old daughter that was in front of me that she had when she was 14. 43-year-old daughter had the same charges. The 43-year-old daughter had a 34-year-old daughter born 1 week shy of her 10th birthday, who was in there. The 34-year-old had a 21-year-old daughter in front of me. The 21-year-old daughter had an 11-year-old daughter.
Please don't go lower,
who
Judge.
had the circumstance of being pregnant with her second child.
No way.
With her second child?
Second child.
An 11-year-old, sir?
Yeah. So I got the 21-year-old back in about 14, 15 months. She was 23. Her 11-year-old was 13 with 3 children. The 57-year-old was back in front of me. She was 59, and she had, at that point, 342 lineal descendants we tracked, and then 2 weeks later, after I got that report, she had 358. And between 1996 and 2000, when I retired, exponential increase, she had more than 3,400, and I had 120 plus of her people in front of me in my courtroom, one way or another. One of her sons had 63 outside children by, I think, 59 different baby mamas, and he was 29.
63, 59, he's 29.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So, I mean, people don't even think about this kind of thing. And then we did another study. We found in the high schools in the Memphis area, there were maybe 35 or 40 core problems where the students were much older than they were supposed to be, and they were creating a negative culture for the whole high school. And we found out that this woman that I had in my courtroom and 4 others, every single one of the 5 that they had in there that we were tracking was an ancestor for every single one of the kids in the high schools that were the core of the problem. So just total dysfunction. And the last we checked was 2008. It turned out these 5 women had almost 250,000 people in West Tennessee that were descended of them, and they were still breathing.
Safe to say that they've never even heard of the word condom, is what you're saying.
Yeah, not only that, but in this group of 3,400 that I wound up dealing with before I retired in 2000, out of this family, we found 2 people that had jobs and graduated from high school, and they were girls who had essentially been kidnapped by their fathers when their mothers went to the penitentiary and got taken to Chicago, which then had a pretty good school system. So those were the only 2 we could find. But see, there's a mass of that out there. So when you talk about the impact of what happened with the Johnson administration, I don't think they intended that, but it happened. Next thing we had in the late 60s, we had the individuals that hated that they weren't men, that's the feminists, the ones that hated men, certain of the lesbians, the one that hated that they weren't strong men, those were the beta boys, some of the gay ones that hated that they weren't normal men, and then you had the ones that stacked on and gave the big ballast that said men were the cause of war, man. We need to have love, man, not war. War is a bad thing, man. We need to get rid of all of this toxic masculinity, like, fool. Where do you think this is going to go? So it went there, and they controlled the communications media, and you get what you get right now, where if you go on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, you get this mass censorship where you can't say anything that makes people feel uncomfortable. Oh, my God, it hurt somebody's feelings. Oh, hell, a lot of people need the feelings stomped on, you know. Like, dude, what's wrong with you? Grow stronger.
But the Judge, you've been around when you're doing meeting with all these families. What part of the responsibility is mothers? What part of the responsibility is on the father? Because typically the blame goes on the father.
Well, there are no fathers. And see, the thing of it is, these men that just ran off and left the women, these women don't want the men. All they wanted was the babies. And see, you had people like the poetress Nikki Giovanni back in the 60s were going all around the country, and they were lecturing the women, and they were young women, and they were saying, you don't need a father for your children. Just get prego, find one that looks good, smart, athletic. Yeah, that one. And don't even tell him that he's the daddy, because if you bring a man into the picture, they screw up everything. So there was this point where if you had the guy around, there was a problem. And then there was some that did want the guy around, but back when I first started practicing law 50 years ago, one of our number 1 cases was getting the check cut back on because some ding-bad social worker would sit at the end of the block with binoculars, and if there was 1 or 2 of the 6 or 7 baby daddies trying to play father, they'd cut the check off. So we had problems with juvenile courts around the country where, Judge, that's not my kid. Well, you feed it long enough, he'll look just like you. So, you know, that was before DNA. And I can remember one thing. It was a cop I was representing, and he got a petition to increase the child support. So when they called the kid's name, I stood up, he stood up, 2 more lawyers stood up, and 2 other guys stood up. So this woman was collecting child support from 3 guys for the same kid. So we finagled getting some DNA testing, and none of the 3 were the daddies.
No way.
So, I mean, you have these horror stories going on.
That's some old school Jerry
Sir,
Springer.
was this mostly whites, blacks, Latinos?
Both.
All of the above.
All of the above. The juvenile court started privatizing and acquiring jurisdiction that used to be in superior or circuit courts. So they became dysfunctional circuses, and a lot of them privatized. And what happens is you want to promote dysfunction because that's business downstream.
The anti-hero, the metaphor to that, what would you say is a modern American hero? I like what you said about basketball. They're getting paid tens of millions of dollars to sink a ball. What's a real American hero today?
The only one I can see is Donald Trump or your governor here in Florida. You have people that make stands, but they want to make them boogeymen and enemies. And that's the other thing. Find a boogeyman, the Baba Yaga, so you can go after him rather than expose the platform that you have as being weak. The Democratic Party used to be the one that protected the worker. Now they're in the back pocket for high finance. You've got a weird situation with the interwoven family setups, even the stuff that's not obvious. There's a gentleman by the name of Sam Hinckley. Sam Hinckley was an indentured servant. He was a Huguenot Frenchman who wanted to get away from Catholic persecution, so he indentured himself, came over to the Americas. Well, he seems to have prospered, and he had 7 U.S. presidents that are his direct lineal descendants, 1 vice president, and a whole bunch of billionaires. The most recent you can think of is George Herbert Walker Bush, George Walker Bush, Barry Soetoro / Barack Obama, and Dick Cheney. They're all cousins.
What?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's
Pull up this guy, Rob.
interesting when you look at that. Sam Hinckley, late of Cape Cod. It's been a while back. He was one of those people that 3/5 of the number of which in Article 1 were to be counted toward portioning representation in the House.
Part of the 3/5 compromise?
Yes. So some people think they call black folk 3/5 of a human, but they don't even mention color in the Constitution. It just says for purposes of apportionment, 3/5 of all people in slavery or involuntary servitude shall be counted toward that number. Now, that's what they're doing to a great extent with the illegal immigrants. The last census we had in 2020 is the first of the 5 that I participated in as an adult, where they did not ask you your citizenship. The other ones, they asked not only were you citizens, they wanted to know if your parents were and how they became citizens. The reason they aren't interested is because if you don't get to ask that, then you get to count them in the overall tally. So when it comes time to apportion congressmen or members of the House, California, New York, Illinois, and a few places don't lose representation. They gain it because they get counted, but they can't vote. So that allows the far left to impose their programs based on numbers of people that are not being allowed to vote. Though New York, for example, is trying to allow illegals to vote in local elections. And you'll see the result of it very shortly when you go through an airport. You'll have to have that star in the upper corner of your driver's license to indicate that there was a check to see that you, in fact, were a citizen or what your status was, because California, a bunch of idiots out there said, we'll give it to the illegals because we want to make sure they can pass a driving test. So forget about what you do for the rest of the country, where nobody's ID is going to be valid unless they get a reissued one. But you see, that's that balance, individual versus what the individual owes to the collective. So the devil with the collective, that's the bad part of it these days.
Tom.
Yep. You know, by the way, thank you for that. I've been listening to this, and you're on fire. You may not, you say, I'm just getting warmed up. You're absolutely on fire. You said something, and I want to know if you saw it, because you are so perceptive and you're so precise in what you're talking about here. So you were at UCLA 1968, 69.
65 through 73.
Got it. Well, in 1969, we know what happened there. It was the Summer of Love, and you had the Vietnam War protest against Johnson. Johnson's not going to run again, and women's lib blew up. And all that happened, if there was a place where rebelling against society started in the U.S., then Berkeley was the Wuhan lab in 1969.
Berkeley was crazy.
Did you see it? You were there in the middle of it, and you're a young guy getting a high education. You're going to go into law. What did you see?
Well, I didn't want to go into law. I wanted to go into physics.
Okay. Well, still, you're an incredibly smart guy and perceptive. What did you see at that time that you said, wow, if this keeps up, we're in trouble? Or if this keeps up, did you see some tipping points?
I didn't think we were going to be in trouble because...
I'm going to shut it off right here, but if you get the chance, just do some research on Judge Joe Brown, especially when he started explaining the Obamas, how Barack Obama was connected to the Bushes. I'm gonna do a video on that. It's pretty deep. But anyway, thanks for watching, and subscribe to my channel, and have a great day. Don't forget to subscribe, like, turn on your notifications, and share this video. Also leave comments. Thanks for watching Welding and Stuff.